Hello, hello. Sound test. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this round table focusing on AI, data, and trading. I know it's quite a large topic, but it's actually never been more relevant because the amount of data we've produced over the last few years has exploded with so many layer 1, layer 2, so many chains. And the way we interact with this data through artificial intelligence has also shifted quite a lot. So, my name is Nick, by the way. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bubblemaps, which is an on-chain analytical platform. We make on-chain data fun and interactive and convenient for everyone. Today, we've got an incredible panel of data builders. We can do a quick round of intro, by the way, starting with you, Alex. You're quite a notable figure in the space. You've been around for many years. So in 1 minute, 1 minute elevator pitch, what's Nansen?
Yeah, so I'm Alex, great to be here. I'm the CEO of Nansen. Basically, the mission of Nansen is to surface the signal and create winners. So we've done on-chain analytics for about 6 years. We have 500 million labeled addresses with the best quality assurance in the world, which means that you can not only see what people are doing on-chain in terms of transactions, flows, and so on, you can also see who is doing it. And so we have probably the best smart money tracking, which means you can figure out which addresses are making money, which ones are losing money, and that can be used to discover new tokens and also to help you perform due diligence on them. And for those of you who are Nansen subscribers, we have a really exciting release next week in beta, which I think is going to really deliver a new way to trade.
Thank you, Alex. Ben, you've built quite an incredible social presence on YouTube and other social media, but you're also a builder. So can you share a bit more on this?
Yeah, so I started a platform called Into The Cryptoverse back in 2019 while I was doing my postdoc, and it grew a lot more than I ever could have imagined that it would. But it's basically just a platform that allows for data analysis. We have a lot of on-chain data. We have a lot of social interest data. So there's just so many different ways that you can track what's going on in the crypto markets. And so the goal is to help people manage the risk in crypto and kind of come up with a plan. There's a method to the madness, essentially. And so that's what it is, and it's grown a lot.
Lovely. We're going to talk about this more. I want to pick your brain on-chain data to begin with, because it is the blood of the system. It is the pulse of crypto. Whenever something happens in the industry, good or bad, it leaves a permanent trace on-chain that people can use: wallet tracking, smart money flows, token dynamics. Alex, obviously, you've been doing this for many, many years at Nansen. So I want to hear it from you. Like, what do you think are the best on-chain signals right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends a little bit if you're looking at kind of macro and micro, and if you have a long-term versus a very short-term perspective. Generally, I think it's good to see what the smart money is doing. And so that means looking at addresses that have very positive P&L. So at Nansen, the thinking is that instead of looking at what maybe hundreds of millions of addresses are doing in aggregate, you try to figure out what are the few thousands of addresses that are worth following. And we basically continuously score addresses in terms of smart money. We even have this label called former smart money.
Oh, damn.
If you are no longer smart money, shout out to 3 Arrows Capital. And so that means you can basically follow what people are doing on-chain. So we also have subcategories of smart money. And so you can look at memecoin traders, you can look at yield farmers, you can look at perps traders. And so one thing we've spent a lot of time this year on is actually Hyperliquid and figuring out what the smart money is doing on Hyperliquid. So we have smart perps traders as well.
Okay.
And so generally, I would look at what people are doing. I think it's a good way to kind of aggregate and synthesize what's happening on-chain, because there are narratives that change. It's really difficult if you lock yourself into one specific strategy or one specific metric. And so instead, just using the smartest money as an indicator, I think, is probably the best approach.
That makes sense. And I think there are plenty of smart whales right now on Hyperliquid. So definitely something to look out. Ben, I know your platform is primarily focused on macro data trends, but very curious to hear if you guys integrated some kind of on-chain indicators.
Yeah, we do have a lot of on-chain data. And this is one of the charts you can see behind me. Basically, there's a lot of different on-chain metrics that you can look at. There's the Puell Multiple, there's the miner cap to thermo cap, market cap to thermo cap, MVRV Z score, terminal price, our HODL ratios. There's all sorts of things you can look at, but it all gets kind of complicated when you just look at a single metric. And so what we did was we took about 8 to 10 different on-chain metrics, and then we looked at kind of how they behave from one cycle to another. And you could see that there's like an ebb and flow to the cryptoverse. There's these cycles that have been somewhat predictable. And the general idea is you sort of normalize the way these on-chain metrics move between 0 and 1. And when they're at 1 risk, that means they're extremely overheated and you're near a major top. There's a lot of euphoria in the space. When you're near 0, it means we're just in a risk-off environment and there's not a lot of interest in crypto. And so this chart kind of shows you we're kind of somewhere in the middle, right? There hasn't really been a lot of euphoria this cycle in the same way we've seen in prior cycles like 2017 and 2021. It looks a lot like 2019, in fact. Some interest. Bitcoin mostly led everything. Everything else lagged. But this is a way to kind of quantify where the cycle is at any given point.
All right, that's very interesting. And where are we at right now? Pretty good, or?
We're sort of like in the middle right now. It's more similar to 2019, I think, than anything like what we saw in 2017, 2021.
Very interesting. Thank you, Ben. And I want to show one personal example of how you can use on-chain data into your trading strategy. So this is what we call the bubble map of Shiba Inu in this particular case. And the way that it works is that each bubble on screen is a holder of SHIB. And when the bubbles are linked, it means they have sent each other funds, meaning they know each other. And a cluster is never there by accident. And I love this example because not a lot of people are aware of the fact that there is one guy holding 10% of the supply of SHIB. It's worth 800 million.
Is it crypto.com?
Not even, man. It's an individual address. I wish that was crypto.com, because then we'd have an answer for like what it is. But the story is, one guy in 2020 bought 10% of the supply of SHIB in one address. And everyone then was skeptical because they were wondering, like, who is this guy who's holding that much? And in an attempt to stay hidden and invite more people to come in, he decided to split this initial 10% across multiple wallets. And that's the kind of the frame you see here. September 2021, 3 addresses, then a dozen addresses, and today he has 150 addresses. So my guy is really trying to be low-key. Obviously, everything that we talked about right now requires a level of human interpretation, right? We see the clusters, we see your indicators, and we have to make an actual decision. So my question for you is, with AI, maybe this is going to change. Maybe we won't need this level of human interpretation. So Ben, I want to hear it from you. How do you see, what's your vision of how do you implement AI on your platform?
Yeah, so we're working on that right now. There's a lot of different charts that you can look at. For instance, you have, this is the 30-day moving average of the supply and loss of Bitcoin. And what's really interesting is that it's very cyclical, right? It's very cyclical. When they cross, that tends to correspond to market bottoms. When they're at the other end, it tends to correspond to peaks. And this is one chart. We also have the next one, which is the social interest in crypto. And this is another chart that shows you it's a lot more similar to what we saw during 2019. You had quantitative tightening going on. You had the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates, but the Fed funds rate was still above this theoretical neutral rate, which might be approximated by the 2-year yield. There's so many different things you can look at and so many different charts. And so what we're doing is we're trying to implement some form of an AI bot that you can kind of just ask it questions and get an idea of what's actually going on, rather than have to sort of filter through all the charts yourself. So the idea is to take the thousands of different charts that we have, a chart like this as well, that it's the price of Bitcoin color-coded by social interest in the space at any given time, and to take that and kind of tell you, like, where in the cycle are we? Like, what should we expect? That's the general idea we're working on right now.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a bit similar to what Alex is building, actually. Let me jump in just quickly. At Bubblemaps, we've actually worked a bit with AI. So there are 2 things we're working on. The first one is advanced clustering heuristic. Like, for example, instead of connecting wallets based on transfers, we can connect them based on timing. So for example, if multiple holders are withdrawing from an exchange at similar time, that would create an exchange. And also, we want to help our users understanding what a cluster is. Is it a healthy cluster, like an exchange, like a DEX? Or is it an airdrop, VC receiving tokens? Or is someone trying to be sneaky by hiding how much they own, like the case of Shiba Inu? Alex, I checked your website yesterday, and I was actually pretty surprised because it seems you've pivoted quite intensely from your initial vision to now this agentic AI agent. So very curious to hear why this transition and how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I don't really think of it as a pivot. Actually, Nansen.ai has always always been our domain.
We've seen this coming.
So I think it's an evolution. And maybe by show of hands, how many of you use any AI product? ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, you know. Most of you, I think, are using AI products. The problem with these products is that they don't have eyes on chain. So if you go and you ask, why is Pengu up today? Or who's buying BNB? It's really hard to get a good answer, right? You get kind of a made up, maybe even hallucinated answer. So we created our mobile app, Nansen AI, which basically gives you an agentic interface, but it has every single transaction ever up to the last second on every major L1, and it's enriched with 500 million proprietary labels from Nansen. And so on the screen, you can see what it looks like when it greets you. You can open it up, you track your own portfolio, and you can start asking questions. It even suggests questions based on your portfolio, right? Then you can prompt something, and it goes out and does the research, and it comes back, in this case, with an answer. And if you go to the next slide, the thing that we're really excited about, which we're going to roll out to our pro subscribers next week in beta, is that why do you do all this stuff? It's because probably at some point you want to make a transaction. You want to buy a token or sell it. And so in this case, I think I'm asking about Pengu, if I recall correctly. I don't have my glasses. And so I'm saying buy $3 worth of Pengu. A modal pops up, and you can actually just click execute, and it settles it with our self-custodial embedded wallet and liquidity aggregators on the back end. So it's pretty amazing, actually, in terms of how integrated it is as a user experience. And the way I think about it, it represents a new way to trade. It's on-chain, it's agentic, and it's fully integrated in the sense that you can do discovery, due diligence, and execution in one product.
It's the first time you're integrating trading into Nansen.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Cool. Have you ever tried CMC AI price movement interpretation?
I have not, actually.
All right. Just wanted to have your take on it. You dodged the bullet.
I'll try it.
All right. Fair enough. So maybe a philosophical question for you, Alex. We have 6 minutes left. Do you think this AI agents trading tool has a chance to replace human intuition at some point? Or do you think this will be complementary?
I mean, I think it's going to take a long time if that happens. Like I like to use the metaphor of self-driving cars, right? Like if you bought a Tesla, you probably are not getting into it in the passenger seat right away and just let the car drive. You kind of want to sit in the driver's seat and have your hand on the wheel. And then after a while, maybe you take your hand off the wheel.
Okay.
And then after a while, maybe you sit in the passenger seat or the back, right? So it's a gradual process where you don't necessarily trust it immediately. So I think actually quality assurance and trust are really important components when it comes to agentic trading and agentic user experiences. I think the reality is next year we're going to see a bunch of agentic trading products, and 80% of them are going to lose people money, if not 90 or 95%, because
like
it's not going to be very good.
Trading. That's always
like in traditional trading, like meme coin trading. But that's where it's really important to look at how do you make sure that these agents are actually good, right? Do they do what they're supposed to do? Do they not hallucinate?
Yep.
Do they actually interpret the data right? Do they have common sense knowledge about crypto, right? And there's a lot of these different things that we run evals for, basically evaluations on a bunch of different dimensions for our agents. How good is it at using our API? How good is it at not hallucinating? How well does it format the output? Because you don't want it to have a wall of text, super complicated. Does it understand like basics about crypto? So for a while, when we were building this, it would say something like, smart money is really buying a lot of this token. It bought $200. And obviously $200 is not that much money. So it needs to have the common sense to understand that actually it probably needs to buy a little bit more than $200 for it to be worthwhile. Anyway, so I think the users are going to see what are the agentic products that actually work. And then I hope we will also have more benchmarks, just like LLMs have, to measure how good the agents are at doing certain on-chain tasks.
That's super interesting. I wish we could talk more about it. We have 3 minutes left, so 1 minute each. I want to wrap it up on a positive note. I want each one of us to share a big win which is either some of our users who made a positive trade with our platform or avoided a big loss, and when we made an impact. I'm happy to start with this example. It was earlier this year. I remember this very well because it was Valentine's Day, so I was at the restaurant, very romantic setting. And then in the middle of it, Javier Milei, so the president of Argentina, decided to launch his meme coin. So I ran away from the restaurant, which is not super romantic, and I went back to the office because I wanted to understand what is happening right now with this token. And I checked on Bubblemaps, and I saw that a huge cluster of connected wallets, which belonged to the team, was selling Libra, the token. And the cluster was like shrinking in real time. So we made a thread immediately saying, guys, there's something wrong here. And a lot of our users actually saw the same, but they didn't need us. And they didn't buy in. And a couple of hours later, Javier Milei deleted his tweet of endorsement. And then we learned a couple of days later that it was, in fact, Hayden Davis behind it, who ended up on an Interpol notice. So we managed to avoid our users some troubles here. Ben, how about you, man? What's your proudest win with Into the Cryptoverse?
Probably the biggest thing over the last few years is Bitcoin dominance in general. Back in 2021, Bitcoin dominance was at like 39%. And we talked back then about it going at least to 60%. And so there's been a lot of really strong narratives the last few years of like win alt season and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people have lost a lot of money buying a lot of random micro cap meme coins and chasing those gains when all you really had to do was buy Bitcoin. And you know, we saw Bitcoin dominance go from 38, 39% all the way to 66%. And it was Bitcoin dominance chart is color-coded by the social interests that we were talking about earlier. And it shows you that when you don't really have a lot of new retail coming into the space, like we did last cycle, that when we had tighter monetary policy, you're better off sticking with Bitcoin. And so, like in 2022, people said like alt season will be in 2023, and then in 2023 they said it'll be 2024, and so on and so forth. And now they're pushing the can, they're kicking the can down the road once again. And it's just one of those things where if you looked at the metrics for the last few years, if you looked at monetary policy, you would have known, hey, just stick with Bitcoin, and you're going to outperform most everything else in the space.
That's a bit of a depressing reality. Just hold Bitcoin and forget about the fun. But I agree to a degree. Alex, what do you think? What's your win?
two quick ones. We had a fund that was able to avoid the Terra collapse because they used our feature Smart Alerts and were monitoring the curved liquidity pools. And they saw that they were depegging there and pulled their money. They saved tens of millions of dollars. That's one. The other one is there was a girl in Mexico who messaged me and said that she had turned $500 into $1 million using Nansen. And that felt pretty good, if I'm being honest. So yeah, can't guarantee that's going to happen with everyone.
Yeah, I think
but it was a good story. So
awesome. Did you ask for a commission? That would be reasonable. All right, everyone. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you for your attention. And we're going to be just around. We have booth. Come and see us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.